It's one heated interview after the next. And you could feel free to weigh in, 855-777-9660, 855-777-9660. Who really killed Kennedy? 50 years later, stunning new revelations about the JFK assassination. And that is the title of the new book, which I have in my hands, written by New York Times bestselling author Jerome Corsi. Hey, Jerry, how are you?
Good, Steve. It's great to be back with you.
Well,
Thank you.
it's a pleasure to have you. This is riveting. I mean, I am always riveted by the facts surrounding the Kennedy assassination, or the facts that have been left out of the Kennedy assassination, and what really took place. And you just present some fascinating new revelations, if you will, new facts that we haven't heard before, and some that we have heard before, and put it all together. And let me ask you, who really killed Kennedy?
First of all, start out with it. It goes way back. I mean, my dad was labor union, and going back to the 50s when Kennedy was coming up in politics, my dad, the labor union, were very influential. And of course, I was a truant from school, so I had firsthand experience with many of these people with my dad, and I knew the Kennedys in the sense of watching them, being in the hearings, and the entire story of the Elkins crime family, the Portland, Oregon chapter, which played a major role in Jack Kennedy's career, to the point where one of the consigliere from the Elkins family did warn Jack Kennedy he was going to be killed, and warned Kennedy exactly how a rifle, high-powered rifle with scope, from a tall building in a motorcade. And to answer your question, as I go through all the evidence, and there is a lot of information here people don't know. It has,
right.
After 50 years of researching it, I decided I better finally tell the story. Joseph Farah encouraged me to do so, or it might never get told. I put the blame squarely on the CIA and the Mafia, but the key villain is Allen Dulles, who Jack Kennedy fired as director for the CIA right after the Cuban Missile, right after the Bay of Pigs, because Allen Dulles, the CIA, had lied to Kennedy. Kennedy realized he was not in control of the CIA.
Right. Is it not true that he was talking about closing the whole, if he won re-election, closing it all down and rebuilding it in his own, the way he wanted it, that was more accountable to the president?
He said he wanted to break up the CIA into 1,000 pieces. And Jack Kennedy, had he lived, would have broken up the CIA into 1,000 pieces. This was the key issue. The CIA was rogue. Allen Dulles, the CIA, going back to the period before World War II, Allen Dulles, his brother John Foster Dulles, with Harriman Brothers, had helped finance Hitler, have been part of this new world order. And by the way, the patriarchs of the Bush family, George Walker Bush and Prescott Bush and George Herbert Walker, those two were both members of the Harriman firm and had also participated in financing Hitler. And this new world order, this idea that we would use military power to advance U.S. economic goals, that we, in a sense, became the Nazis. We, took the whole Gehlen organization, the Gestapo secret service that had been working against Russia, made it the cornerstone of the CIA, architected by Allen Dulles. And when John Kennedy refused to use military power and lie and be tricked by the CIA to go to war in Laos or in Vietnam, he was pulling out of Vietnam, the CIA and the economic interests decided JFK needed to be eliminated. And this is not history, Steve. It's going on today. It was a coup d'etat, I argue in the book, and I think present compelling evidence. And it answers questions, here's Saddam Hussein, and we don't find any weapons of mass destruction. Here's the CIA saying Syria and chemical weapons. Well, the UN reports, but they don't attribute the chemical weapons to Assad. The CIA is
they don't weigh in on who did it. Actually, it's not their mandate. Yeah.
But the point is, even back to the Tonkin Gulf resolution, Jack Kennedy, the day he died, had a speech in his pocket that said the United States would fulfill the commitment to help any nation fight for freedom, as long as that nation was willing to fight for its own freedom. He was not going to be bamboozled into a war by the New World Order forces by utilizing U.S. military power to advance economic interests. And Kennedy drew that line. He also was not going to have a CIA that evolved into what we've got today, which is a massive NSA, CIA, almost dictatorship, totalitarian state of information gathering on the citizenry. Jack Kennedy did not want a covert CIA he couldn't control. And when the CIA killed Diem, in November '63, the then head of Vietnam, against Jack Kennedy's explicit orders not to do so, Kennedy realized he'd lost control. He was told, the Elkins family and others made it clear to Jack Kennedy that meant the CIA was going to kill him next.
All right, so we're talking to Jerome Corsi, the author of Who Really Killed Kennedy, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. I believe that's WND Books. Our friend Joe Farah. So let me ask you this. So the CIA got Lee Harvey Oswald to do this, and you believe, I believe from what I've read in the book, that you believe there was also more than one shooter. So you believe they got Lee Harvey Oswald and one or more other shooters to do this?
Lee Harvey Oswald, I think, did not fire a single shot. The lies, I think he was completely a patsy, a set-up fall guy like he said he was. As I show in the book, and the Warren Commission knew this, they suppressed the information. When Jack Kennedy was killed that month, Lee Harvey Oswald was on the payroll of the FBI as an informant, and a CIA file on Lee Harvey Oswald in the false defector program had existed since 1957. It's maintained by James Angleton, who was assistant to Allen Dulles even during World War II in Switzerland, helping the Nazis escape. And the Robert Kennedy, first time Robert Kennedy heard the name Lee Harvey Oswald was not the day his brother died. That file on the false defector program had been shared with Robert Kennedy by the CIA, and Kennedy knew all about Lee Harvey Oswald. Also, Robert Kennedy blamed Allen Dulles, as I show in the book. Robert Kennedy made sure he fired every member of the Dulles family that was in government and swore no Dulles would ever work for the United States government again.
And you also talk about so Oswald had ties to the KGB, right? Not only the FBI, was he
Yes.
had an FBI working for the FBI, but had previously been with the KGB? Is that what you're saying?
Well, certainly the KGB, when Oswald defected, had recruited him and was working with him. And I interview and discuss at length Pasepa, who's one of the top KGB defectors from the ex-Soviet Union, from Romania, who presents evidence the KGB believed they were in control of Lee Harvey Oswald. I don't believe that's the case. I show in the book, really revelations people don't realize. Dallas was the third time that month a plot had been launched. There were two other previous assassination attempts on John Kennedy, one in Chicago and one in Tampa, both set up with a patsy. The model the CIA had developed was developed in 1954, 57 in Guatemala. E. Howard Hunt was the architect of a false invasion force that overthrew the head of state in Guatemala. We then later killed the head of state and blamed it on a patsy. Another architect of that was Edward Bernays, the father of public relations. I knew Edward Bernays. My father had hired him. I had dinner with him many times. We talked about Guatemala. We talked about the Kennedy assassination. The CIA applied the plot developed to do coup d'etats in foreign countries like Guatemala to the United States, and with the cooperation and involvement of the mob, Sam Giancana, Carlos Marcello, Santos Traficante, all of whom confessed later, one way or another, some recorded confessions that they were involved in the JFK assassination. There were two previous attempts to kill Kennedy in November '63. Dallas succeeded.
All right, now one more. The famous Zapruder film
Yes.
You studied that extensively, and what you came up with frames, final frames that had not been seen before, and you say that they proved that the shot to the in the back of the head was an exit wound.
Well, first of all, the Dallas doctors identified Kennedy's wounds as having come from the front. The throat wound was a puncture wound. It was an entrance wound. The doctors agreed on that. The doctor said the back of Kennedy's head had been blown away. Now, in the Zapruder film, the last frames, which are there, they just are rarely watched, are hard to see, but Jackie Kennedy panicked. She got out of the car and she started looking for Jack Kennedy's brain and his skull to put them back. I mean, if you break a bone, sometimes you think if you just put it back in place, the bone will be okay. It doesn't work. At the end of the Zapruder film, Jackie has actually reassembled Jack Kennedy's head and has him sitting upright. Jack Kennedy's dead, but he rides through the triple underpass sitting upright as if he were alive. And in these frames, you can see the back of his head. And with these frames magnified and properly enhanced, it's clear the back of Jack Kennedy's skull is blown out. You can see it, which is exactly what the doctors at Parkland Hospital described. And in fact, I argue in the book that the head hit was a simultaneous hit from the back and from the front. Work by Josiah Thompson measured Kennedy's head first flew forward instantly, flew backward. The front head, the shot from the back, blew out the head flap on the right, and the shot from the front, entering almost simultaneously, blew out the back of Jack Kennedy's head, splattering Clint Hill, who was trying to get on the limousine with brain matter and skull matter.
Right.
A big piece of the skull was picked up in the street behind the limousine of Jack Kennedy's skull in the street after the assassination.
Well,
the Harper fragment.
Folks, if this fascinates you as it fascinates me, and as we approach the, it's just unbelievable that where we are, how many years later, 50-year anniversary coming up on November 22nd. The book, Who Really Killed Kennedy, by our friend Jerome Corsi. I urge you to get your hands on it. It's available today, right, Jerry?
First day out, and it's also on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, WorldNetDaily, WND.com, Superstore.
Okay. Jerry, great interview and great book, and good luck with it, sir.
Thanks, Steve. Always a great pleasure. Thank you very much.
Take care. My pleasure. All right. Jerome Corsi, ladies and gentlemen. All right. We're coming. I mean, it gets very complicated, but it's all presented in the book. From the shots themselves, everything leading up to the shots, the aftermath of the shots, it's all in there. And, it's one of these mysteries that we'll never know definitively. There'll never be a definitive answer. Unless papers that are now sealed, unless when and if those are unsealed, and I guess one day they have to be unsealed. Maybe that'll shed some light into the Warren Commission and their deliberations and how they came to their conclusion and what was left out of the report, and how any tape recordings or notes taken during those deliberations, I think, would be very, very informative and telling as well. Okay, 855-777-9660. We're coming back right here. Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.